science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction. Fiction.
Spiritualist salutations, cognonauts. It's Exofathom, and I will be your host tonight. My name is Ayla, and I'm joined by my two lovely co-hosts, Mike and Nick. Mike, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, just hanging in there. Thanks for asking. How you doing?
Hanging in there. Nick, how about you? You hanging in there? Doing good?
It is a mythically manic Monday, and might I say, I feel a myriad of maladies.
That's a lot of M's.
It is.
I'm like V for Vendetta, but for the letter M.
There's like a Simpsons joke. It's like, that's a good use of L's or something like that. That's a good use of M's, sir.
There you go.
Oh, dang. Yeah, no, seriously. Applause to you. Oh, yeah, it's Monday. I'm super
Jazz
tired.
Claps? Do you want us to like snap?
Maybe. Well, okay, so tonight we're going to talk about Ouija boards. Halloween is coming, and I recently watched the Ouija movie on Hulu. Super fun. And so I thought it'd be fun to just talk about where they came from, what the science says, share some spooky stories and some fun facts. So just to my two co-hosts, do either of you have any experience with Ouija boards, or what comes to mind when you think of one?
No, they were forbidden in my household.
Fire and then throwing them out the window.
There you go.
Right. Well, and same. And that leads me to my second question. Do any of you know anybody who actually was okay playing with a Ouija board?
Well, no, I don't know anybody that's actually used a Ouija board, to be honest.
I think someone in my family must have.
Must have?
Yeah, I mean, like they seem, some members of my family seem like witchy type people or would enjoy that. So I'm sure someone has touched a Ouija board before.
Oh, that's creepy. That's creepy. Well, and it's kind of telling that we have this superstition or fear about it, because in the 1800s, 1900s, it was game on for people. So, with Ouija boards, there's a lot to be said. Some people think that it's releasing secrets from our subconscious minds. Others claim that Ouija boards harness supernatural forces to predict the future or contact spirits of the dead. Ouija boards been used to write books. It's been praised as a source of cosmic wisdom, and it's even been blamed for murder, mayhem, and madness. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting episode, and I think you'll learn a lot. I know I did researching this. So first off, I think everybody knows what a Ouija board is. It's just a flat board with letters arranged on it, and people have this thing. It's like a triangle with a little viewing circle in the middle. And the triangle, you can't play alone. That's like one of the rules. So you want two or more people to sit around the board, place their fingers on the planchette, is what that little triangle thing is called. And then you ask questions and you watch the planchette move from letter to letter, spelling out answers. And people are often, as the Smithsonian article would say, dumbfounded when they play this game, because nobody thinks that they're moving it. It's presumed that it's a spirit or something like that, which leads me to kind of my first question, which is a harken back to our Randonautica episode. Nick, I'm curious, do you think on some level whatever source is being tapped into with Ouija, is it similar to what might be going on with Randonautica?
Maybe like an older form of it. Some sort of gateway to the other dimension, maybe a communication device, some sort of interplay going on between two dimensions for sure. Yeah. The only difference, I guess, would be that Randonautica is a digital interface, but I'm sure they have digital Ouija as well, right?
They do. They do have
Yeah.
Ouija apps. And it's just funny to think about that because we both kind of like, when it comes to Ouija, but,
Mm.
contacting the dead, it's been around. There were these, quote, automatic writings that were going on in China in 1100 AD. Similar practices were seen in India, Greece, Rome, medieval Europe. There's also like the Book of the Dead, Egyptian practices. And then you have spiritualism in the 19th century America, which, it seems so far away, but even today we've got the I Ching, tarot, magic 8 balls, pendulums, mediumship is on the rise again. And like you said, we even have apps that have these things. So I don't know. I mean, like, I think it's just interesting how um, there's a part of us that really longs to connect with something, I don't know, otherworldly, or to seek out answers from some unknown void. And I don't know if that's just a human thing, or I don't know. I thought it was kind of interesting to think about it in that way.
Well, until I see dolphins doing Ouija boards, I'll assume it is just a human thing. But who knows? I mean, maybe there's some sort of ritualism within the animal world too.
I wonder what an octopus would do with one, or a couple of octopi.
Doesn't
right?
even need a partner. He's got
No.
8 hands.
All think on their own.
Yeah.
Well, I like the idea of animal ritualism, because I know like birds, they exchange pebbles, and there's like a significance. There's not just any pebble; they hunt for something specific.
Mhm.
So that's kind of interesting. Um, well, yeah. And so, some of the things that I came across was, could it be the holographic universe? There was an article about the I Ching tapping into that. And it kind of makes me think about the movie Wanted. And they had the tapestry with, um, like thread is just being threaded. But people noticed if you counted the overstitches and the understitches, you get like a pattern. The pattern is attached to letters, and then meaning is described from the letters. So in a lot of ways, this is like a search for meaning out of maybe just like chaos.
Mhm. Oh yeah, certainly out of the unknown, right? It's the ultimate unknown is the other side of whatever is on this side of, or whatever's on the other side of this life. So yeah, I would imagine that meaning is definitely what we're searching for in respect to that, and I think that that's probably one of the biggest questions that humans have had. I mean, it's a question animals probably have too. I mean, I know that elephants hold mournings at when somebody in their pack dies. I think dolphins do the same thing.
It's true.
Um,
Elephants will even go back to the gravesite and they'll touch the bones of
mhm.
the elephants that died.
Yeah. So I know that there's some sort of contemplation about the other side going on. I don't know how, high of a degree they're thinking about it, but they're definitely recognizing it. So, I mean, I would imagine that it's kind of baked into the cake of reality just because there is a contrast to living. And that contrast is kind of unknown because nobody comes back to tell the story.
That's true. Very true. Mike, what about you?
I mean, I wondered, like, if it's just used to comfort, like just the like you were talking a little bit about grief, right? So if you could find a way to communicate with the dead or to a different dimension, and hopefully getting who you want and not some sort of demon, it just might be like, I don't, just comfort. Like it may not even be like a real search for meaning, but just something to numb the pain of loss.
Hmm.
'Cause,
Yeah.
like, yeah, with those elephants, they grieve all the time and they go back and they mourn.
Those
And
elephants.
those elephants. I wouldn't be too shocked if dolphins do the same thing. But there's something so nice about being able to contact the dead, whether it was somebody close or just for guidance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just might be that nice little hit of emotions or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also kind of baked into the cake of just being a human is that I know that a lot of people turn their nose up at sort of like the concept of an afterlife or whatever, but I think that that's kind of a human thing. If anything, it provides comfort in the face of the suffering of life. And I don't know. I don't know how replaceable that tool is for humans, and maybe we'll find out eventually as we get more advanced. But it would seem like it's a tool that is somewhat necessary, especially considering people go through a lot of stuff in their life. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I like, Mike, you alluded to how the Ouija board could be used for more than just contacting the dead. It can be used for divination or getting answers, finding out where your husband left the spoon that you both love before he, I don't know, left or something. Um, and then to what you were saying, Nick, about oh gosh, I had it just a minute ago. Kind of just like talking about like just understanding meaning and, whether we have these older notions of like contacting the dead through mediumship and spiritualism, or we turn our nose at it, or we go the other way and suddenly this tool that connects us to the beyond is deemed scary and negative and don't use it. Because I feel like that stigmatization of a tool robs us of the tool. I mean, like I said, what if the Ouija board did work and was some great means of connecting to the beyond, but all three of us are too scared to use it?
that's a good question. But then here's my question to that question: would you want to use it if it worked?
I don't know.
Right.
I don't really
Exactly.
know.
You have to be ready to accept the consequences, right? Like if there's a way to have like a good stable connect, like if I could get like an SSL certification with my Ouija board and like I'm connecting to the right person, that'd be
Right.
fantastic. Then I'll use it, right?
Yeah.
But the chance that you can invite something in that you may not want to contend with or know how to contend with, that's where it gets a little dangerous.
Yeah, you'd need like the photon mail version of a Ouija board, something that's encrypted and end to end.
Yes.
And nobody can get into it. Yeah.
Well, you don't
Oh, I
want
love it.
demons just popping up through your Ouija board, right?
Certainly
Nobody has
not.
time for demons right now.
We don't even have the tool set to handle the demons properly.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. That's true. That's very true. Well, and that's cool that you mentioned that, because then my second question to your question, Nick, to my question originally,
Mhm.
is I was thinking about this, and maybe Mike, I'm like totally off here, but I was thinking about like random number generators. It's kind of reminding me of the rug that's getting woven. It's coming from somewhere. It's said it's random, but then there's a lot of experiments that start to see patterns in the randomness. And to that, I'm like, how do we know if we're suspecting the Ouija board? Why don't we also yet suspect these random number generators as also maybe having malevolent origins? Potentially.
Is that like a chaos theory, you mean? Where you can
Um,
eventually, over enough amount of time, you can find patterns in absolute chaos?
yeah, okay, yeah. So there's an experiment that I'm actually thinking about. It was
Mhm.
something I think you were watching, Nick, where uh this computer program puts a dot on like a piece of paper. And once one dot is plotted, it goes
Mhm.
down and to the left.
Mhm.
And then it has the option to put a dot somewhere else. So it was just like a very simple code, just to keep the dots in the paper or something like that. And as the simulator ran through like years of data, just putting dots everywhere, you start to see this really beautiful like picture emerge. It's like a snowflake kind of thing. Um,
This is a
and
Triforce.
what?
It's a Triforce from Zelda. That's what they. For some reason, that I remember exactly what you're talking about. It's a series of negative space and positive space triangles that are stacked up in a triangle, um, and yeah, like a pyramid. And for some reason, he says that no matter what you do, eventually these dots form that shape.
Right. No, you're right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it I don't know what the name of the experiment was, but I remember watching it and thinking, gosh, this reminds me of every other random number generator based experiment that I've seen. And these are some that are coming out of Yale, some that are coming out of like left field, someone's back basement. But typically with random number generators, the idea is that it's randomized and it's coming from some sort of source that could be the same as the I Ching, universal consciousness, spirits, aliens, guides, or like the Ouija board, which scientists talk about the ideometer effect, which is that it's our subconscious beliefs moving things in the direction we want them to be. With random number generators, they say that the outputs aren't really random numbers. Instead, they rely on algorithms to mimic the selection of a value to approximate true randomness. Um, and so, you see in both of these cases, there's a tool or a thing. And then science is like, it's not that cool. And then, but humans are like, but what if? And the what if could be good or bad.
It sounds like biased, right? So who's in control of the pseudo randomness and who's ultimately in control of this Ouija board? If if it is all like subconscious action, whether it be from the algorithmist or the person running the Ouija board, the Ouija board operator, or the people, or whoever's actually pushing it,
The Ouijist.
the Ouijist, yes.
Get technical here.
So if it's either of those two people, then there could be some sort of latent bias. If it's, I tend to err on the side that it's like pseudo randomness and whether that actually models some sort of different dimension. I think that's like if that model is actual true to like the other side of things, then that's where the woo woo comes in, right? Like so it gets a little spooky.
Yeah, that's where you get Einstein's uncomfortable kind of essays where he's just like, I don't know about that quantum stuff. I don't like it. I don't like it.
That's where it can have a malevolent origin, I guess, and being in one of the lower dimensions instead of being in one of the higher dimensions.
Yeah, I'm wondering also, is there anything really? Is there anything? Does randomness actually exist, or is it just a concept that we try to aim towards?
I don't know.
The minimal amount of order would be random.
I guess the least amount of order, yeah. Okay.
But then if you start getting into like universal field theory, which it's like, there's our plane and things may be random here, but if you just zoom out far enough, it's like not,
Right.
or vice versa. And that will drive you insane if you really start thinking about that. Like, what is real at that point, right? Because if there's an infinite amount of zooming out.
Well, is it countably infinite or is it uncountably?
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
And where do you want to start setting up your patterns to pull things out of the random? I think it's a little bit too of just being human, of being able to find a pattern in something. Like I think random is an ideal, and then having something perfectly having something perfectly random is an ideal that we chase, and having something that is perfectly predictable is another ideal that we chase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Because I was just thinking about it, and it's like, well, randomness would assume that there's no cause, and I don't know if there's anything that exists without cause.
Platypus. No.
Platypus, yeah, that is true. There is no reason for a platypus.
Nobody knows why that thing exists.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Pretty sure if you found a god and asked that god why it existed, that god wouldn't know either.
It's one of those like if you do pottery and you mess up a pot, you chuck it in the I forget what they call it, but it's like slack or something. It's where you discard clay, let it melt down again, and then you use it. But maybe they chucked the platypus that way, but it bounced off and landed in. They were like, "No, you're supposed to be a discarded animal. Why are you here?"
England thought the platypus was a joke when they first got a taxidermied platypus from Australia. They legitimately thought that somebody was pulling a prank on them.
Well, have you seen the poor thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look up a platypus after this. Just stare at it. So yeah, I mean, if there is proof for randomness, that would be it, and that's a good T-shirt idea. Just gonna go back to our T-shirt podcast themes.
Pure randomness is likes a dragon to chase for sure.
Right. Well, okay, cool. This is like a great place to start getting into the history of Ouija because it is kind of interesting. And I might bounce around a little bit. So if you have questions, just interrupt me and I'll go back. But okay, so Ouija boards, they're similar to talking boards, which were used by spiritualists. So it's kind of a formalized version of what a lot of people were doing during seances and things like that. Spiritualism, of course, is a belief in the ability of the dead to communicate with the living. And the public turned to talking boards for a variety of reasons. Some claimed that spirits dictated entire books to them via the Ouija board. Oh, that's a typo. That sentence wasn't supposed to be there. I already covered that. Okay, so we're looking at World War One, the Great Influenza, the Great Depression, World War II. These all surged sales in talking boards as many civilians were hoping to get in touch with loved ones who had lost their lives during the wars. And then, interestingly enough, in the 1967, around the time of Vietnam, another 2 million boards were sold. And so I think it's really interesting if you look at the trajectory of sales of Ouija boards in like just American history, they tend to kind of spike during these times of great turmoil, which kind of gets to what we were opening with is this idea that when things are in flux or just we need to find meaning generally, and when things are really hard, we might be motivated to do that more so.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. And well, and what's funny is that let's see. I don't have to read that, but then okay.
There.
Sorry,
I
I
was gonna.
lost. Oh, go
I
ahead,
was gonna
Mike.
say something.
Yeah.
If you were still looking around,
Mm-hmm.
there seems to be like an important dimension of emotion here. Like when emotions are high, people tend to look for techniques within divination to explain things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I mean, think about like the last 18 months or so. I think you did the episode on exorcisms, and the exorcisms were actually rising in the States, if not worldwide. And I know you see more magic shops and crystal shops that are popping up. On Instagram, there's a lot more like astrologists and mediums and stuff like that. Um, and then with October coming, obviously, like it's witchy everything. But so, yeah, I mean, there could be an argument to say that that's kind of what we lean on in times of uncertainty or high
Yeah,
emotion.
and it's weird because this notion of science gets pushed around a lot, right? To be like the comforting factor,
Hmm.
but it seems like science is so cold and demystifying that it loses that element of comfort. Because once you can explain something or rationalize it, it loses that bit of quality that would comfort a human.
It's magic, really.
Yeah.
And what's funny about science is that, like, some branches are starting to rediscover magic in a weird, you know what I mean? Like, there's just certain stuff that you'll see in the news, and you're like, gosh, that's based in reality, but that's so fantastical. I can't think of any examples now, but I'm just thinking about like, you know, interstellar travel. Not that we can do that now, but like all the space stuff that's coming out right now. Um, Quantum stuff, obviously, but
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Well, so what I thought was interesting was that, Ouija, it was a balm for the soul, so to speak, during all those hard times. But then after decades of popularity, decades of seances and just celebration of Ouija as something mysterious, but mostly fun and good to have, one movie comes out. And like suddenly it's just like, nope, everybody shuts down. And that movie was The Exorcist. And I think, Mike, you kind of talked a little bit about this too, but like when that movie came out, people ran out of there screaming. They passed out, threw up in their popcorn. Um,
Oh, poor popcorn.
huh?
Poor popcorn.
I know it's some disgusting popcorn.
That's a
And
disgusting smell. Ew.
oh yeah, I know. I
Popcorn
would run
puke.
out of a
Blech.
theater if. And so I thought that was just interesting because it's like here's this one movie comes along and it's so terrifying to take something that was being sold in the millions as something that like now needs like to get out of your house and be burnt.
Yeah. Um, well, and superstition too. I think around the 70s or 80s is when really the satanic panic started happening again, and people were very concerned about Satanism, and so the Ouija board kind of got tossed into that, like, oh, you're communicating with the devil, and I think that's why a lot of parents clamp down on that stuff.
Poor Ouija board.
It seems to be like a pretty common cycle within like Christianity as a whole to take anything outside of it
Mhm.
and then demonize it, right? So, you talked about the devil and the symbol of the horns being like an old pagan god or something like that that ends
Mhm.
up being turned into the image of the devil, and that ends up reoccurring a lot with different symbols and different ideas outside of Christianity. So I can definitely see where Ouija gets pulled into that whole what was it, satanic panic?
Mhm.
What were people freaking out about? Yeah, because
Yeah.
for me growing up, it was the idea that you would invite a demon in. Like growing up with
Mhm.
a somewhat strong Catholic family, it was that notion that you don't want to get possessed and you don't want to have you don't want to open up those channels, especially because you don't know how to combat anything that's coming in.
I'm curious, did they ever talk about what you do to prevent that aside from not tampering with Ouija?
Um,
Pray.
well,
Pray and use your rosary like a good Catholic.
Oh,
so you're supposed to go through all your rituals, right, and be stay strong in faith, which might be part of the prayer thing. But I was only baptized. I never did like my first communion. I never did my confirmation. I never did any of that stuff.
no.
So yeah, right. Gasp. But the important thing is to not lose your faith in God. The rest of the stuff, arguably, is just organized ritual. But as long as you can hold on to that faith, you'll be fine. You can invite those things in, and you won't become possessed. There might be something in your house that does. If you obviously do everything right by the Ouija, then you should close that door. But if your faith ever wavered and you had a moment of doubt, then the idea was that would be the moment that the demon would get in you and possess you.
Well, that's some incentive to remain faithful for sure.
Or if
Um,
somebody doesn't say bless you when you sneeze.
that too. That too.
Yeah.
I recently got noise canceling headphones and I couldn't tell if Nick sneezed or not, but I thought to myself, gosh, if he did sneeze and I didn't say it and I repeat that pattern because of these new headphones, like I wonder if that'll have an effect. Like, it's just
Or,
Let's do an experiment.
well, not say bless you.
It's funny. I've been in places where it's really weird to say bless you, and I just do it as
Yeah.
an automatic response.
Yeah.
And
Anybody
they
who gets uptight about that can take a long walk off a short pier. That's all I gotta say.
They would just look at me very strange, like, "Why do you keep saying bless you?"
Because it's polite, you dick. That's why. Jesus.
I'm
People are
trying to
so
cram your
sensitive.
soul back into your nose, okay?
Yeah. You just sneezed some of your essence out. You got to get it back.
No,
Your
take
essence.
God's grace and be happy.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, and so speaking of like demons and possession and stuff, The Exorcist actually was based on a popular book, same title, which is based on a story that came out in 1949. It was like a real story, I believe. This boy Roland Doe, and his aunt.
No.
What, is it not real?
No, that can't be real.
Well, I think it's Doe,
Let's
like
see.
Jane Doe, to like
Let's see.
Okay.
hide his
Rolling
identity.
Is he
the
rolling
dough.
in the dough?
After that movie?
Oh,
Did he get
oh, maybe he
after
sold
that
his
story?
soul for It's a likely story. But what ended up happening was his aunt showed him how to use the Ouija board, and then he got possessed. And like Catholic priests had to go do an exorcism on him. So the book The Exorcist is actually based on the diaries of one of Roland's priests. And what's interesting is that the author of that book, I don't remember how you spell it, but it sounded like bloaty. He read that diary and became absolutely convinced that the possession was real. Then he got really obsessed with Ouija, and then really weird things started to happen to him personally, like his phone would fall off for no reason and hear weird things. But anyway, whether that was just him being paranoid or not, after The Exorcist, priests did start to speak up against Ouija board. And one of the videos I saw was really funny because it's like, yeah, God gave us like 10 commandments on these tablets written in lightning, or I don't know, bush was on fire. I don't know. There's like a whole bunch of stuff that's all fancy. But then flash forward to like the 1960s, and suddenly God is like, do not buy this Hasbro board game. And I remember which video I saw, but I was cracking up at that. I was like, God, I mean, like, I see why the church would be like, just don't do it. But I also see like, yeah, if you zoom out a little bit, it's kind of silly. It's just a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not really a game though. It is purposely made to speak to quote unquote the other side, right? I mean, like
But it's
there
sold
is
in
no
a toy
game
store.
to it.
It's sold
I
I
in a
know
toy
it is in a
store.
toy store, which is
Like,
very
why?
strange.
Uh-huh.
Now we're talking about
Getting
intention, right?
kids getting a kids attached to black magic is profitable. Come on.
Totally. Nick. I don't know why it was sold in
My
toy
first
stores.
witchcraft kit.
That'd be pretty cool.
That
Yeah.
actually would be kind of cool. I'd buy that for my niece. A little
Oh,
potion.
jeez. Yeah, and then you'll never see them again. Um,
McDonald's starts doing like a Ouija board game tile
Mhm.
thing where if you get certain messages, you win certain prizes.
Or no, you get like a letter at each Happy Meal. You can piece together
Yes.
your little Ouija board. And it says supersize it.
Well, there's
get a
always
heart
been
attack.
there's always been an element of that, like, method to speak to the other side. Before it was that, is the magic 8 ball, and then it was crystal balls and scrying too. Like you
And
get a
crystal meth.
mirror.
No, just kidding.
Yeah. You get a mirror, or you get a black, obsidian stone and put water over it and try to look into it. Yeah, scrying.
I've never heard of that. Or that's at scrying. I think I've only heard that word in like Lord of the Rings. Scrying.
Yeah, the Palantir is kind of like a scrying orb.
It's also a game mechanic in Magic the Gathering.
Hey, that's cool.
Scribe for cards. You lift like a couple cards off the deck and maybe pick one and discard the other.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I came across the word, was through Magic the Gathering. But yeah, no, you can do it with crystal balls too, like the fragmented ones, like the ones that are all like prismy on the inside, not the ones that are like clear through.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're supposed to catch different visions off of different planes in like the fragmented stone.
Well, and see again though, like yeah, it's the same thing. Where are those visions originating from?
I think it is coming from that what we're trying to call randomness, but maybe it's better to be said as potentiality. And I think what happens is that humans like having little tools that test the sort of like inner potentiality of their own minds. And so like, I think that these little things kind of trigger us to think specifically or more abstractly. And so, yeah, I think we like that type of stuff for sure.
Yeah. Well, oh, go ahead, Mike. You're going to say something.
I mean, I think we like that, and just being able, the idea of being able to tell the future, or like just to reach out into that weird unknown. I was just gonna agree with Nick, but like, yeah, that's always something I think we've been obsessed with.
Yeah. Big time.
Totally. Well, and it explains why spiritualism kind of blew up. The timing was right. People were really struggling and needing something to believe in, or distract them, or maybe give meaning to those that they've lost. And so it was interesting to me is that it all kind of started to spread in the United States, at least, after these Fox sisters were claiming to have communed with the spirit. So the Fox sisters, they lived from like 1813 to 1890. And they were kids when this was happening, like 7, 11, and 14 or something like that. And the house that they were in already had a reputation that it was haunted. And soon the family, after moving in, were frightened by unexplained sounds. It kind of was like a knocking. Other times it was like a moving of furniture. And so One night, Kate, one of the sisters, challenged this invisible noisemaker, presumed to be a spirit, and she said, repeat the snaps of my fingers. And it did. And then it was asked to rap out the ages of the girls by tapping it, and it did it accurately. Pretty soon, the neighbors were called over. And over the course of a few days, things got a little more intense in the house, so the girls ended up moving away. Unfortunately, the rappings followed them. And when they were at this new place, there was like a Quaker couple that were like family friends. They invited the girls into their home. And as things started to get intense again, they were immediately convinced of the genuineness of the phenomenon. So that's when they helped spread the word among their more radical Quaker friends, who became the early core of spiritualists. Then, a little bit after that, the Fox sisters demonstrated their rapping experience in Corinthian Hall in Rochester. That was actually the first demonstration of spiritualism that was held in like a public setting. So, you have these girls, haunted house, they're claiming all this stuff, and people are paying to see them connect with this entity, to hear these
Are they
rappings.
Romani?
You know what I didn't say. I know what lady you're thinking of, and I
No.
can talk about her in a little bit, but
I was just saying, this sounds like a grift to me.
oh,
It sounds like one sister was with her hand underneath the table going,
I know. I know. I know. Well, and that's what's so crazy to me is like it seems pretty silly that people were like so shocked about it. I think in one article I read they were able to levitate a table, which
Mhm.
again you could totally mimic. Now, there was a time where when they got older, they confessed that it was all fake. They lost all their money. However, the one woman that did the main confession, she had married a man who wanted her to give it up and join the church. But after he died, she was like, "No, it's real," and she went to her grave saying it was real. So just to have like the balance of it, there was a little bit of like gossip around it for sure. And those Fox girls became super famous, as did their public seances, mostly in 1850, and it attracted notable people. I didn't recognize the notable people like it's the 1800s. It's like, some random person. But I did know that Sojourner Truth went to one of them. So that was one name that I saw, and I was like, oh, look at her. So
Probably Helena Blavatsky too.
maybe, although she did end up working really hard to separate herself from spiritualism. And I can get into that because it's actually a really interesting side note. But just to wrap up those Fox sisters, is that all these imitators started to come in and they were also having seances. You have like a few years go by and now you have hundreds of people claiming to communicate with spirits. And I just thought it was kind of interesting, this like monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. You have like no seances, then these girls, like I'm thinking Salem witch trial. It was these girls that kind of got everything kicking. These girls go on the road and then they inspire all of these spiritualists.
Yeah. The Victorians were doing a lot of opium back in the day. And
were they?
yeah, and so there were a lot of strung out housewives that had money to burn and wanted to talk to spirits.
So do you think it was just a bunch of grifters? Just grifting?
I honestly think it's like Ayla said, but mentioning with the witch trials, I think it's a form of hysteria. Not necessarily hysteria, but like a fad, like a giant fad. You think about like Beatlemania, and seeing girls like jumping up and down and passing out at the sight of two moppy, limey bastards from England, or four, sorry. So it's like, yeah, I think that there's a something about that for sure. And I think that Victorian women were bored because men excluded them from everything, and they were basically like little birds in cages that didn't have anything to do. And so this, like, the spiritualism became the it thing to do.
Summon demons.
Yeah.
It also would elevate them in society, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's a similar argument that an anthropologist makes about the Salem witch trials. That
Mm.
some women ended up wanting to be labeled a witch because it would elevate them in society, even if that meant their death. That's how hard it was.
Yeah, notoriety. Yeah.
No, better
That's
to be infamous than never known, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting. Well, and I did mention that their family friends were quote radical Quakers. I didn't get into it, but there was like a tangent about those that like that original group and how they did end up doing a lot of like feminist work on the side too, which is pretty interesting, but less Ouija board specific. So I kept, but yeah, and then some of these seances people would have said to have had the power to levitate objects independently of the
Oh,
medium.
you're muffled a
Uh,
little bit, Ayla. Hold on.
the
Try that again.
technological demons have came.
Yeah.
Oh, can
We've
you hear
summoned
me?
them.
I know. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Oh, phew.
Just say that last sentence again.
Oh, yeah. So just in these seances, people would have the power to levitate objects, speak independently of the medium, leave pictures on photographic plates, or to materialize objects, including themselves, which I don't really know what that means. How do you materialize yourself for people?
What's that? Pepper's Ghost.
What?
Pepper's Ghost. I don't know if it was invented that early. Hold on.
Like the mirror thing underneath
Yeah.
the stage that would like project your image out somewhere else.
Precisely. Actually, and it was let's see, it's demonstrated okay, so it was demonstrated in 1860. So that might have been a little bit late.
No, I mean that's right around the pickup because they were active around the 1850s is when people started noticing them. So yeah, 10 years later makes perfect sense. Um, and yeah, and so you just have all this stuff coming out around, like talking with the dead. Then in 1886, the press reports on a device that's used by some spiritualists in Ohio, a talking board with letters, numbers, and a planchette like device that pointed to the letters. And so that's kind of the original Ouija board. It was called a talking board. And then later, you have it being advertised. And what's funny about the Ouija board making a jump from like something maybe homemade to becoming something that you could mass produce and sell was that it still had to get through the US Patent Office. And to get through the patent office, then you had to prove that the product you were selling actually worked. And
Oh, the standards of back in the day, huh?
I know the standards. And it was just really funny because the patent officer says, okay, well, you don't know my name. So if your board can spell my name, then I guess that would prove it works. And so the inventor, he like sure enough spells the guy's name, and then the patent officer is so freaked out he runs out of the room and he's like, it's approved. Like, is super scared.
That officer's name
Who
was Albert
patented it?
Einstein.
Yeah.
Right. So true. And that's a good question. I have the name somewhere. I'd have to fish for it, but like there was a guy who patented it. Then there was somebody who collaborated and then ended up taking it over. And then there was another guy that took it over. And maybe I think their names are at the end of this, so I'll mention it down the road. But yeah, so just
It's Elijah Bond.
yes.
Mhm.
What a
Elijah.
terrifying thing to come across in your day-to-day work, right?
Oh,
The
yeah.
patent office.
Yeah, even if it was a con, they got your name somehow, some other way. It doesn't matter. It's just all of a sudden you just like, all right, just prove you can prove it by guessing my name. And it guesses it, and you're like, oh
Well,
shit.
the worst is like, could you imagine like that actually would be a really great like TV show where it's like this patent officer that works in the division of spooky things. And people are just constantly bringing spooky things to be inspected and seen. And it's like, we want nothing to do with the Ouija board, but this person's like 9 to 5 is to have everything Ouija board and more.
Like the X patents or something.
Yeah, yeah, the X patents. Well, it's like that Good Place episode. Nick, do you remember they have like the different like demons that evaluate human deeds, and there was like one demon that's just like weird sex stuff.
Mhm.
and like you talk to him, and he's just
He's
like,
miserable. Yeah. He has to spend eternity cataloging all the new weird sex things humans do.
So desensitized to everything
Yeah.
until something comes new and he's like, oh, what the
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, yeah, that actor needed an Emmy or something, because like the face that he gave to have that role, it was like a split second, but it was so perfect. It was like part shame, part like kill me, part like it's like a whole bunch of levels to that face. It was so good, so good. Yeah, so I mean that's kind of the history of the Ouija board. Do you have any questions or thoughts before I kind of dive into another section here?
So it really came around in like the 1800s. There's nothing more ancient. Oh, you said it came from talking boards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
That's
I tried I tried looking up talking boards, and I just got rooted back to the Fox sisters, because I think it's kind of like a game of SOS. They were the ones to be like knock once for A, or like to develop a system of communication. Prior to that, yeah, ancient civilizations would have had something. Like the Chinese in 1100 had the writing something or something. I didn't get a chance to dive into that, but it would be interesting to kind of look at like all the communication methods throughout time.
Yeah, because then you almost get close to like remote viewing type things, right? Like if you have automatic writing and you're channeling the dead or something, then you get
Right,
very
or
close
something.
to like, yeah, working through those similar systems. Because the Ouija board is just supposed to guide your hand, right? Like supposed to be the spirit guiding your hand around the thing to get
Yeah,
to the message.
yeah. Which is like really creepy if you think about it. Even pre-exorcist, to invite a spirit to like move your body, a little creepy.
Yeah, that would always. I mean, just spooky, right? Because it's just like if we die, we go somewhere. It just might be that in this dimension you can't see it, much like a two-dimensional being can't see a three-dimensional being, or can't
Mhm.
but only see one little slice of it or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's why, when you're kind of toying with it or playing with it, it was always advertised as this like mysterious board. And they were hesitant to make exact claims about to like what you were doing with it or what you could do with it, but there was all the like chatter around it. Um, and in fact, let me just see here. I had a picture. It must not have transferred. So let me just describe it to you. The original ad, or maybe I can just paste it here so you guys can see. Um, the original ad is really interesting. I went into the I forget what it's called. It's like the Library of Congress archives. So I looked up the original ad. They give you like the date and some article. And the first thing I noticed is that it was produced by the Danziger's company. And the symbol, it's a huge five-pointed star, which I was like, oh, I'm sure Nick's going to feel uncomfortable about that.
What? I don't like stars.
No, well, because you're
Is
talking
it a
about like
pentagram or
logo.
is it a star?
Well, it looks like, well, I don't know. Can you see it? It's on
It's
page.
a star,
Oh,
but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
What's a pentagram? The circle around it?
Yeah,
it's the way
like a
you draw the
magical
lines.
system. Yeah.
It's the way
Ah,
that you draw it out.
but see, there's a star inside of it. So it seems like they're kind of
Ooh.
alluding. Oh. But no, it's just so funny. So they call it Ouija, or the wonderful talking board. See, it's got like a nice happy spin. Um, And here's what the ad says. It says, "The Ouija is without doubt the most interesting, remarkable, and mysterious production of the 19th century. Its operations are always what is that? What does that say? Hang on a second. I can't.
The operations are always Oh my gosh.
interesting and frequently
Oh,
invaluable. Sorry, the photo is better in Word for some reason. I guess Google doesn't like it. But let's see. So its operations are always interesting and frequently invaluable, answering as it does questions concerning the past, present, and future with marvelous accuracy. It furnishes never failing amusement and recreation for all classes, while for the scientific or thoughtful, its mysterious movements invite the most careful research and investigation, apparently forming the link which unites the known with the unknown, the material with the immaterial. It forces upon us the conviction that a great truth was contained in the statement of the Danish prince, quote, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than were ever dreamed of in thy philosophy." End quote.
Price
will,
$149.
Yep.
Yeah.
Price $149. I'll
God, people were so fucking eloquent 100 years ago.
You gotta love
Fuck
capitalism,
me.
man. Capitalism always
Jesus.
does this. It'll take something, put a price on it, and sell it so well.
Yeah.
Like it takes any symbol, right? Like think about the amount of like Che Guevara shirts that
Oh,
are
God.
for sale,
Oh my
right?
God.
From capitalistic means.
Yep.
It's a great system. It works, and even does it with the divine and divination.
That's right. 149, and you can talk to God too.
$1.49. Just
Well, and
take
okay,
it.
I could be reading too much into this because I already kind of went off the deep end with the star logo, which I thought you'd appreciate, Nick, because of the owl and the Randonautica association. But how about this?
Mm.
Danziger's address is 6th Street and Penn Avenue. Why has it got to be on 6th Street?
Oh, I was going to say if it was like 66 6th Street, then yeah, you definitely got me there.
But there's at least
There
one
is-
6.
Yeah.
There is like a weird inverse thing happening with that logo because you typically would draw a circle around like a symbol of Solomon. I forget what it is to once you start building like your little summoning circles and occult magic type stuff. You want that to kind of seal everything in and protect yourself. But the inverse would imply you want the spirits to go out and around you. So maybe there's a little bit of that in there, but that might be a reach.
Probably not, though. I mean, again, people were much more learned about. I mean, like this is the beginning of advertising and marketing, so they were very.
I mean, it's a good ad, right?
Diligent.
And then under all of that, it goes, quote, "Always the cheapest."
Always the cheapest. That's right. Before cheap meant something bad.
But is it on sale though? Is it on
Yeah.
sale? You can only get the Ouija board if it's on sale.
Seriously. So I only pay $1.20 for my Ouija board. Well, and I think it's interesting, like Nick was saying, the eloquence of this advert, because it's a little bit of something for everybody. It doesn't actually talk about the dead. It really just talks about reaching out for those, the scientific minded, the thoughtful, the one trying to figure out the unknown or unite with the unknown, which is really cleverly written and super intriguing. And it doesn't seem haunted or scary at all, does it?
No, well, it's meant for amusement, right? Or amusement or the act of investigation, which in itself is amusing for people that are minded in that way. Like it even goes back more ancient, like Aristotle has talked about math systems and their intrigue, or like why the mathematically minded are kind of go that way. And it's for the act of investigation. And so what that ad does wonderfully is kind of play on those ancient notions of investigating. It doesn't really matter if it's real or not. You're going to be interested in it because you can investigate something that is unknown.
I wonder, is it because the 3 feet on the planchette are like evenly distributed, so when you have multiple hands on it, every little micro movement shifts it?
Good question. So William Benjamin Carpenter published a report examining these automatic muscular movements that take place without the conscious will or volition of the individual. He actually uses an example of crying in reaction to a sad film. like when you start crying and you really don't want to cry, but it just happens.
Mm.
Which is weird to think of it that way. So I'm like, well, that just means it's a sad film and you're crying, but that's a muscular movement. That's something happening in your eye. And so other researchers built on that, and they saw applications of the iodometer effect in the popular spiritualist pastimes. Um, they thought that your brain may be unconsciously creating images and memories when you ask the board questions. Then your body is responding to your brain without you consciously telling it to do so, causing the muscles in your hands and arms to move the pointer to the answers that you, again, unconsciously may want to receive.
Mm.
So again, it's like that ad is so perfect because it's even saying like, well, something's happening. Why don't
Right.
you investigate? And
Mhm.
scientists are like, well, it's your subconscious. It's your unconscious.
Yeah, and for 149, you can debunk me too. You know.
It's true. It's true. Well, and I thought, there was a study. I want to say, no, I'm not going to say where it was from. I think it was reputable, but I don't want to like go on record saying that. But anyway, somebody was doing
This is a record now.
No, well, I mean, we're recording. I just don't want to be like, oh, pulling a study out of my butt. But
Bunch of journalist over here, investigative journalist.
I'm just trying to be walking that line. But there was a study that did two groups, and with the Ouija board, they were asking them questions that they wouldn't normally know answers to. And the fail rate in the normal group was give or take 50-50. It was like 45, 60, some, or like, well, 45 to 50%, which was giving them indicators that they were just guessing. But with the group that was using the Ouija board, their responses bumped up to like 65% in accuracy. And what that study was talking about was that maybe it's helping people channel like the subconscious or unconscious knowing that there could be answers that you have, but you like I don't know, it's weird that it could be answers that
Priming.
your subconscious would know that your actual conscious wouldn't know. I'm fumbling this up, but does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, tapping into that collective unconscious neural network that, like if all of our brains are buzzing and creating electricity, then perhaps there's some sort of, alternate dimension energy that's, retaining all the information. And yeah, I mean, maybe using the ritual of Ouija allows you to tap into that, even if it's just in a small way.
Or even bringing back to just to the shadow, to the subconscious. There's memories that I have that I won't remember unless I'm in a certain location. Like that location will prime the memory to pop up into my conscious mind. A Ouija board could be just a general tool for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's kind of an exciting thing to think about. Going back to like the HemiSync article, it could just be one of those ways that we're uncovering that our brains know more than we might be able to access day to day, which is kind of exciting. If you could, I don't know. But then I also think about how like you have to have two people or more playing, and so I wonder if it's like two brains are better than one, and so it's somehow you're able to like you know neuralink the brains and get answers that way or something like that.
Well, the very few rituals of the past ever consisted of just one person.
It's very
And it
true.
was, I think that, in a real ritualistic sense, we know that, yeah, more than one head, more than one person is always better, as long as those people have the same goal in mind.
Oddly enough, except for the shaman, I wonder if there's like you need a suspension of disbelief, right? Because if you have more people there, then you can believe that spirits are pushing it around. But if it's just you and you're just sitting there and the thing doesn't move, or you have any bit of doubt within you that the thing actually works, then it won't work.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, I mean that's absolutely right, because you never know for sure the knowledge of other minds. So it's like building on a fundamental like philosophical issue there too.
Well, that's where ritual would come into place. It gets everybody into the same mindset, right? So, you're doing some sort of ritual. Everybody's doing it together, whether it's dancing, whether it's singing, whether it's praying. And it's usually some sort of mantra that gets repeated. That repetition process gets everybody hemi-syncing together and allows you to tap into that fifth dimensional space. Maybe.
But now
There you
we've
go.
wandered back into hypnotic trance.
Right. Exactly.
Is that the space for that communal fifth dimension? My interest though is like with again that shaman class. If the shaman just sat there alone with the Ouija board, would it move? Would he or she be able to channel those spirits? Because typically shamans, they do their thing alone because they have to. At least the initial initiation ritual.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure about the practices, but I would imagine that, the learning probably is done with a teacher, and then whatever the shaman does on their outside time could add to the wealth of their knowledge. But I don't know. I mean, it would seem to me that you need an audience, right?
Depends on the purpose.
I suppose so. Or you could just take a large amount of psychedelics and then go trip in the desert for 3 days and come back to your village and be like, I learned some shit.
Yeah.
I learned some shit. Well, that's interesting stuff. And just speaking about like schools of thought, I'll do a little divergence here. Nick, you mentioned Madame Blavatsky. Now she actually co-founded the Theosophical Society, which that happened in 1875, and the specific reason was to separate herself from spiritualism. And why might she do this? Well, I found this really interesting. I was doing some research, and of course, I start with Wikipedia, and there is like a book. The section was called Evolution, and I won't do the whole thing, but just check out this first paragraph, if you will. Spiritualists reacted with an uncertainty to the theories of evolution in the late 19th century and early 20th century. Broadly speaking, the concept of evolution fitted the spiritualist thought of the progressive development of humanity. At the same time, however, the belief in the animal origins of humanity threatened the foundation of the immortality of the spirit. For if humans had not been created by God, it was scarcely plausible that they would be specially endowed with spirits. And this led spiritualists to embracing, quote, spiritual evolution. And I just thought that was so interesting because I never thought about like how a theory of evolution, aside from like the major religions, I never thought how it might affect subcultures or even spiritualism that was running parallel to that time. And that would be the thing that Blavatsky is like, no, 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 we're going to go this direction over here.
Well, it's also bizarre to me that they didn't consider animals creatures of God as well. Like, if God created everything, where did animals come from?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, no. Only God created us and the entire universe. These animals, I don't know where they came from.
He might have seen some on a boat once, but like only 2 of each.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. There was a lot going on. Blavatsky is basically the grandmother of the New Age movement. Everything that comes out of the New Age movement is kind of tied to Blavatsky's theosophy, which basically stated that all religions have the same sort of message and they're basically saying the same thing.
And what's interesting? She's also credited for being, because a lot of her theosophical doctrines were influenced by Hinduism and Buddhist ideas, that she started to help bring that into the Western esoteric, and like you said, the New Age movements. But yeah, no, it's just interesting, especially because like she traveled a lot and was a very interesting woman.
Apparently, she went to Tibet from Constantinople, so Turkey, and did a trek from Turkey to Tibet to go meet with a master named Kut Humi. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I want to go to Tibet someday. I think that'd be dope.
Yeah, she claimed that the masters she met in Tibet were clairvoyant, clairaudient, and had telepathy, and they could control other people's consciousnesses and dematerialize. So you could see where like a lot of the spiritualism stuff still sticks around, but she's ascribing it to Eastern religion instead of the Western ideals.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Makes sense. Well, yeah. So that's kind of that little bow on that section. Did you guys want me to get into a couple of spooky Ouija stories?
Sure.
Oh, okay. Okay. So one of the stories, it's called "The Boys Who Asked the Ouija Leading Questions." So two teenage boys, Joshua Tucker and Donald Schlashklin, they were playing with a Ouija board in 2007, and they asked if they should become serial killers. When the board replied
Great question.
yes, I know. When the board replied yes, they asked who they should kill first, and the board said mom. And that's precisely what they did, killing their mother and their 13-year-old sister, Elizabeth.
Psychopaths.
Yeah, well,
It's
especially.
like asking a Ouija board, "Hey, Ouija board, do I deserve a raise?"
Hey, Ouija board, should I get
It
like
just
a
goes to no
full
immediately.
pasta carbohydrate dinner? Yeah, no. Well, and it's interesting if you think about the odometer effect. It means that these two boys were just waiting for a sign to say,
Yeah, they
"Yeah, go
needed
kill
an
your mom."
excuse. Yeah, it reminds me of the Matrix movie that we watched, right? About
Mhm.
simulation theory, how about a whole bunch of people use simulation theory as a reason to become misanthropes and kill people.
Yeah, it was in them all along.
Yeah.
That's what it just sounds like they would use anything. Like
Mhm.
they just need some sort of confirmation from somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. So and there's another boy who said the Ouija board made me do it. In 2012, a teenage boy from West Laco, Texas, stabbed his longtime friend in the abdomen. The friend survived, albeit after a few harrowing days in intensive care. When asked why he did it, the teen said, quote, "The Ouija board made me," end quote. At the time, West Laco police spokesman J.P. Rodriguez said, quote, "He actually believed what the Ouija board advised him," end quote. And the teen, whose name was not released, pled insanity. Let's see. I think most of these are just about murder.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's like, the Ouija board told me to do it.
And it's funny too because you think about like correlation and causation, and it's like, well, just as it correlated doesn't mean the Ouija board necessarily did it. But we're just gonna stay away from that board regardless. It's just not good.
Imagine you're walking the steps up Chichen Itza, and the priests are about to sacrifice you, and as soon as you get to that top step, you see the priests, and they're just with their hands on a Ouija board. And they're like, "Him?" And it says yes, and then they just rip your heart out.
Oh my god. That'd be terrible. No, I know. I
It
don't
was
want
the Ouija board the entire time. Everything that's ever happened.
It's like the same thing about like rock music or violent
Yes,
movies
exactly.
or violent
Yeah.
video games or any of that stuff. Same thing.
Yep.
In a lot of ways, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is the last story. This is on Zozo. This is actually a cult internet phenomenon. Mike, have you heard about this? know you
Am I the expert in cult internet phenomena?
You are the internet.
You
so-
are. No, no,
I am
no.
the whole internet.
Yes.
Don't misunderstand me. What I mean to say is you always talk about like the online scary stories. Like you like to read
That's a
those
creepy
message boards.
pasta.
Yeah, uh-huh. Have you
Like,
come across Zozo?
Zozo demon.
probably, but I might have been very drunk, so I don't remember it. But it's Zozo, cult internet for another decade, blah 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 blah.
Don't worry about it.
If you get into it and describe it, it sounds like something that I would know, that I would come across.
All right. So
You just continue. You're good.
all right. So over a decade, message boards. Oh, okay. Sorry. So there's a lot of internet chatter about Zozo conjurings, and you could actually go to YouTube and you can find all kinds of Ouija board scary stories. Type in ZOZO, and you will get a whole litany of spooky encounters. And in fact, a lot of them have like millions of views. And I believe there's a Reddit board just dedicated to this demon, and everyone has really similar stories. And the hauntings, they really just don't have any evidence, but people on the internet are very alive to keep them alive, especially around Halloween. I can get more into that because that was pretty vague. But it is, like Nick said, a board demon, and it'll give you a hefty dose of the creeps. It's an ancient, mysterious demon with foggy origins who communicates with people via Ouija board. His preferred style of communication is expressing grim threats through the planchette, though he is also said to be known for making ghoulish sounds, breaking things, and instilling fear for fun in those that conjure him. And you'll know you'll have awakened him if the planchette spells out ZOZO.
No.
Yeah. And it was
So-
first introduced on a 2009 message board. But if you go back to the original Exorcist movie, the name of that demon ends, I believe, in a ZOZO. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like he's just kind of the catch-all name for the demon, and I guess the lore is that there's one demon that you connect with through the Ouija board, and that would be Zozo.
Well, and you know what's interesting? Just thinking about like the origins of Ouija, it got sold a number of times. It's currently owned by Hasbro, and they made millions of dollars. They actually funded Ouija House, which was one of the scary movies in 2018 about Ouija, and their sales went up. Same thing happened around, I forget, it was like the 70s. There was a sale transfer, and then there was some sort of crazy thing about Ouija, and the sales went up again. I don't know what correlation I'm drawing here, but it does seem like if there's one demon that comes through this board, and everybody who owns the rights to the board gets super rich. I don't know.
You think there's some
Collusion.
sacrifice going on?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Good deal.
Well,
And
yeah.
it would make sense if you're giving a demon power. The thing you want in return would be money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Just a theory. Just to put that out there.
The strange thing though is like once you learn a demon's name, that gives you power over said demon.
That's right. Based on your studies, that's totally true.
So why would the demon want all these people to learn their name or learn Ick's name?
It's probably
Maybe-
not a real name.
Well, it's because no priests are messing with it. It's all these like unfaithful people, right?
Well, I mean, they're not getting possessed. I don't know. They're not. They just may not believe.
Tell it to Roland Doe, man.
Yeah.
And
He
here,
became the first millionaire.
I know, seriously. Well, and actually, that's the premise of The Exorcist. She was playing with the Ouija board. Ouija board comes out in Paranormal Activity. There's a movie, I Am Zozo, What Lies Beneath, Grave Encounters, The Conjuring 2, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, White Noise. And in all these movies, it's somebody messes with the Ouija board and then they get possessed. And that's like kind of the only go-to storyline with Ouija in movies.
It's all a conspiracy by Big Ouija.
Yeah, big
It's
Ouija money.
really production efficient. Like it's really cheap. Like you
Yes.
could just buy a Ouija board. You don't have to send anybody on location. You don't have to pay for a bunch of shit. You just buy one Ouija board and set up your actors in the room, and you're done. They're possession.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, if you have time and in the daylight, go to YouTube and type in like Ouija board stories, because the video, like I saw these kids in New York, and first of all, people are brave. There were people in like an abandoned asylum. People went to like grave sites. They went to tunnels built on graves or places where people died, and oh my God, like I would have a heart attack just being there in the presence, right, at dark. But then they're trying to do Ouija, and I can't tell if they're fake videos. I mean, well, they're probably
they're-
fake, but I mean, but assuming that they're all fake, there's so much effort that went to some of them that it just makes me happy. Like, look at these humans out there, like.
But it sounds
They're
like we
getting
have
paid
to
by
go.
Big Ouija in order to sell more boards. That's what
Hey, Big-
Hasbro's doing. They're paying people to go put YouTube videos up.
Hey,
Well,
if
look,
they will sponsor
Hasbro.
this episode,
Yes.
There you go. Hey,
Or an adventure, like we can have a podcast out in some
yeah.
Hasbro sanctioned asylum.
We'll go use a Ouija board in Castle Dracul in
There it is.
Transylvania. There we go.
Ultimate Ouija.
And we'll film it too.
We'll have to take it from Prince Andrew first, but or Philip, whichever one of those creepy Brits owns it.
Nah, we just guerrilla shoot it. Just go there, hop in there, and film it.
He's half
It'll be
dead
fine.
anyways. He won't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, no one will know. Don't worry.
I think
well-
he is Dracula.
Oh man, that's gonna be hard to beat because I have some Ouija jokes for you guys if you have a minute.
Just to
boy.
make things lighter, can we? Are things too scary right now for our listeners?
Super
a little bit. So here's my favorite. I'm so dead inside that people keep trying to reach me through Ouija board. Why was the landlord upset after playing with the Ouija board? He didn't know there were so many people in the building who weren't paying rent.
Wow.
Why did the chicken get a Ouija board? To contact the other side.
I'm
my
gonna go depart from this universe so you can after these jokes.
I know. I've got 3 more for you. In desperation, I've been trying to meet guys through my Ouija board. Unfortunately, they kept ghosting me.
Oh my god, what dumb millennial wrote these?
Modern joke.
All right, you're gonna like this one. How does Mario contact the spirit realm with the Luigi board?
That was pretty good. I like that one.
Instead of using a Ouija board to talk to ghosts, I use a pile of window cleaners. I call it my squeegee board.
How do you even make squeegees into a board? That's ridiculous.
But it just sounds like Ouija. That's the joke. Explain it. Yeah, no, that was a pretty lame one. But the best one is me. Quote, spirits of the dead, give us your message. Quote, the ghost goes WEHA. And then I go, oh my God, guys, it's I'm really excited. So they keep going. WEHAVEU. Keep going. And then it ends up spelling out, we have updated our privacy policy.
Oh, I thought it was going to say, we are trying to contact you about your car's extended warranty.
That would be perfect. That would be absolutely perfect. And then the best joke actually is a story from the 1920. It actually happens to come from William Fuld, who did work for and invested in the Kennard Novelty Company, which is what first released Ouija. They eventually gained control of the Ouija business after the founder cashed out. And what's interesting is that there's an article, the Clovis News, Thursday, July 15, 1920. It says, Mr. Fuld makes the only original Ouija board patented in the United States and trademarked all over the world, but he wouldn't trust it with so much as a question about the weather. Quote, believe in Ouija board, Mr. Fuld laughed heartily. Quote, I should say not. I'm no spiritualist. I'm a Presbyterian. Been one ever since I was so. Everyone since I was so. And I don't know, that's a weird quote. But the point is that most of the people that owned the rights to Ouija did not believe in it, particularly the ones that owned it during the Great Depression when they were earning millions of dollars in sales while the rest of the country suffered. They literally laughed to the bank.
Well, I'm sorry, but if you were buying a Ouija board during the Great Depression, you probably don't deserve that money. I'm just gonna say.
I mean, but I think people were doing it to see if, like, can you tell me where the gold is, or trying to use it to help, like a last resort, which is like kind of fucked up, but also like interesting. They always say buyer beware, and I just think it's interesting that the founders for the Ouija board really couldn't care less, didn't touch it.
Yeah, they're making money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
Totally
toy.
they're interested in. But the poor people that needed some sort of comfort, they were looking anywhere.
Right. And I think, that's something to think about. I've been in a low moment for the past couple months with my knee injury, and I can't tell you how many times I have put this what is it? It's like okay, so it's a House of Intuition. It's like a witchy shop, and it's a nice shop. They have beautiful stuff, beautiful crystals, good smelling candles. But the candles are also purported to have magical properties, So there's one break and cut, and it's supposed to like cut curses and kind of like give you a clean slate. And I've just had so many injuries that I was like, maybe I should buy this candle. But I can't bring myself to do it because it's an expensive candle. And I'm like, what am I really buying this for? Like, what am I looking for?
What if it's actually a candle that causes you to cut yourself and break another bone?
I know, exactly. It's like all these little actions makes me think of the Hero's Journey episode where it's like, I didn't buy this candle last week or the month before. What if I deviate and buy it this time? And like, I don't know. But I just bring that point up because it's like the Ouija board was something for people to feel connected after tremendous loss. And I know a lot of people now are going through tremendous loss or just uncertainty. And so just beware, and think about these kinds of things. Why buy a Ouija board when you could even try a random number generator or something like that?
Or I can sell you a bridge.
Or a bridge, yes. Wait,
No,
huh?
what?
Bridge. I just like accepted that. I was like, yeah.
I got a bridge to sell you. It's only $1.49. It's the cheapest one.
Doing it.
Yeah, no. But the question is like, even if it's not real and it doesn't work, if it brings you comfort and it feels like it makes your day a little bit better, one can make an argument that as long as it's reasonably priced within your budget, then that's an okay thing to buy. Because what are things like streaming services? What does that actually bring you into your life?
Right.
Comfort. That's it. That's the only thing. It's not like you gain some new skill. Maybe you can find a streaming service that gives you a whole new set of skills you can learn, but you have to then take that and then do something with it. So initially it seems like a product of comfort, maybe a little bit of learning, but you still have to do something outside of that.
Well, and I think you nailed it on the head. It's really whatever you're wanting to do, even if it's an esoteric side or not, it comes down to your motivation. Because you're right. If my motivation's comfort, do I want this candle that's going to give me some sort of like esoteric comfort? Or do I save my money and get a massage in like a month? And like that also would bring me comfort. So yeah, I don't know.
It's up to you, but it makes, I can see where people would buy into Ouija if it's not real. And if it is real, well, that makes a whole other conversation. And I don't know if we'll ever find out if it is or isn't.
Well, and this is what kind of creeps me out because pre-Exorcist, it was about comfort. Post-Exorcist, the sales are still in the millions, but it has that negative connotation and people are buying it anyway. And I'm just wondering, like if intention is something that matters and this is some kind of conduit, like could be the reason everything's going, the way it is right now. I'm just kidding. I'm bringing everything.
You'd have to see how many people watch The Exorcist and then bought it, right? Or how many people regularly watch horror movies and then go out and buy this. Because it might be like there's more people buying Ouija boards than people that watch movies. Not to understate the power of cinema. Of course, there gets like, you get 3 or 4 levels of people removed from the person that watches the movie. The whole idea behind the Ouija board might change, right? All of a sudden it becomes less dangerous and more seductive, like doing something that's taboo.
Yeah, and I guess that's my question early on when I was like, do you know anybody who's done anything with Ouija? Because like everybody I know is like, no, don't let that in my house. And so even though millions are still being sold, I'm curious if like one, those people don't have that negative attachment or they understand that negative attachment and they want to like fuck with it anyway. And if that sort of intention,
I think it's worse than that. Oops.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I just fell.
It's the Hasbro Corporation trying to shut you down.
Yeah.
Well, I think in a lot of respects, yeah. I think in a lot of respects, the tabooization, if that's not a word, but came from that morals panic back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Like we talked about I mean, people said the Beatles were the devil for saying that, I Want to Hold Your Hand was like the most, like racy song that was ever created. So like,
Sorry, it's just silly.
I mean, we had very strict moral thresholds back then. And so I think what's happening too now is that we have less moral thresholds now. And so people don't hold the same sort of taboo with things like, communicating with quote unquote spirits or whatever. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. To be honest, I have no clue, but it is interesting to me because I think that maybe some of the more conservative outlooks on spiritualism, or perhaps the more the abstinent outlooks on spiritualism, could have stemmed from a folklore or a mythology held by whatever that culture was that told them about the downfalls of interacting with such a device. And I think some of that mythology has started to wear away, and now people don't have those cautionary tales anymore. And so they just don't take it as seriously.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I totally hear that. I think where I'm going with this, and again, this is all suspending disbelief because I'm just thinking about stuff. But you know how like observed particles behave in the way that the observer's kind of wanting it to, like in certain like quantum studies.
Yeah, kind of, but not really. But yes, I do.
Well, yeah, so like there's certain studies that like if you're trying to measure something when
Yeah,
you're
the
in the
double
room
slit experiment.
measuring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my my thing is that if before Ouija people were doing it and expecting good outcomes, and now they're doing it and expecting bad outcomes, in a reality where Ouija is tapping into something beyond, like a Randonautica or a demon or entities or other dimensions or whatever, do you think, again, suspension of disbelief, but do you think that the intention with which you go into it could color the outcome?
No, but I think what I was trying to say is that the lack of, the laissez-faire attitude that people have about it now, I don't think people have such a moral objection to it as they did, 30 years ago. I think that we do because our parents were weird about that. But I don't think anybody younger than us has that same sort of like taboo. So
Well,
what I'm saying is
YouTube would
that,
agree with you.
what?
YouTube would agree with you.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that, to the uninitiated, somebody that's just walking into this without understanding the potential gravity of what you're doing would open themselves up to more harm or potential harm. Whereas somebody who is very cautious with the concept of a Ouija board might be able to get away with using it without harming themselves.
See it.
I would say yes. But you have to understand what your intention is. You can say that you intend to do one thing, but in reality intend to do something else and not even know it onto yourself. Like a subconscious intention, right? Like if you're playing with Ouija boards and you have some sort of subconscious desire to want to see if that thing exists, and that's your actual intention versus the conscious intention, which may be let's make a YouTube video and put it out on the internet. This is going to be, look at, we're in this creepy place. We're gonna have a bunch of views on this thing, right? That might be your outward intention, but the inward intention might be something that's obfuscated from yourself, even. So I think that
That's true, right?
intentional walking into that situation, just like any situation, really does matter. Whether it be playing with Ouija boards or something far more mundane.
I like it. That's a really good way to put it, and I think that's a good way to end this show too. I mean, that's all I've got in terms of the Ouija. Yeah, I don't know. Good food for thought, and I definitely want to watch some of those scary movies that have to do with Ouija because it's Halloween soon, and I like scary stuff.
The Paranormal Activity, the most horrifying part of that movie is the woman rocking back and forth the edge of the bed.
Yeah.
That dude is something else. If I ever woke up and I saw like my fiance or my girlfriend rocking back and forth staring at me,
Not
It's
good.
done. No, I'm leaving the house. It's over.
Yeah.
It's the deal breaker. There's no way I'm gonna stick around in that house.
That's kind of how I felt. Nick had this one like hypnagogic dream, and he told me about it, and I was like, "Oh, we're gonna be living together? Oh no!" It's like, oh shit. But it's fine. He's good.
That's good. I'm happy nobody ends up dead
Yeah.
in that story.
Yet.
Convenient.
No. I was kidding.
Okie dokie. That's it for you, Ayla.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. Awesome.
Unless
Well,
you
thank
want more Ouija puns.
No,
Ouija
no, I
jokes?
think we're
I got more
good.
Ouija jokes.
No.
You're gonna
I
have to
think that's good.
communicate with
Thank
me
you.
through the Ouija if you
Yeah.
continue with said Ouija
Yeah.
puns.
All right, but the Luigi board was really good.
You sound so sad, dude. Just like, all right, I won't do it anymore.
No, I don't have the link anymore, but there was like 20 puns and I pulled out like my favorites. So
Well, thank you for that. It was a great conversation. Very cool topic. And just another add to the list of spooky concepts gearing up for Halloween. So thank you, Ayla.
you're welcome.
We very much appreciate you. And thank you to everybody who took the time to listen this evening. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. I know I certainly did. And we hope that you give us some feedback if you feel like it. Maybe a comment in the comment section. Consider giving us a subscription to our YouTube page. Would really help us out, ExoFathom. And I think Mike's turn is next Monday. So stay tuned for that. Yeah.
You want to hear a little preview?
Yes.
Yes.
We do.
So it's going to be on the veil.
Mm.
The notion of, because October is coming around and the veil between
Oh.
worlds thins, and it's the best time to part it. So we'll get into that, and then some like initiation rituals, and some fun things.
That sounds great. Yeah. So please stay tuned for next episode Monday night, next Monday at 8 p.m. Mike will be hosting a talk about the veil and the differentiation between the living and the spirit world. So I think that's going to be a great conversation. So please make sure you check us out next Monday at 8 p.m. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate you. And until next time, Cognonauts, you stay out there, and we'll catch you on the next ExoFathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.